It is a beautiful privilege to learn to love, serve, and obey God together as a family. But serving on the mission field also requires wisdom each day to be able to care for your family as you serve. As parents, you need to investigate some of the common challenges missionary families face on the field and identify ways you can maximize the positive impact it can have on your children and marriage.
My situation is a little bit different than many people because my grandparents as well as my parents were missionaries. So I have a long experience of being in a missionary family. One of the best things about my experience as a kid was that we had many other missionaries and national workers who came through our doors. My parents, my mom especially, had the gift of hospitality. And I think one of my favorite memories of growing up was listening to adult conversation around the dining room table. I learned so much from the people who came in and out of our home.
Living overseas as a family is, we have a lot of fun and joy. We have a new experience in new culture, new food, new transportation, and new costumes. But as a family, we experience the work of God and how God moves around the world from the field. That's one of our joy. And also, when you look at your family, in a way you can spend more time together if you have a good priority, of course. That's a good part. For children especially, it's a bilingual or trilingual society. So sometimes your family may think, oh, where am I belong to? Or your children sometimes need to speak your own mother tongue, but English and also field language mixing together. Sometimes you don't quite see their abilities up to the generation of people in back home country.
I think more than we would think, our children have opened doors for us that might have been closed otherwise. It's a bit surprising how much they open doors for us.
Strong families make a strong mission, and we really see through the years that it's through families that God blesses. So to make the family focus rather than the organization the focus.
So time as a family growing up was also very stressful because our kids would get really sick. Back then in the small town, we didn't have the medical care that we now have. So I mean, you put a lot of trust in God to heal your kids, but we had more family time looking back than probably most people do when their kids are that young.
David and I brought up our 3 children in Peru until they were teenagers, and I would say, looking back, that the benefits of them growing up in Peru far outweighed some of the challenges. They grew up bilingual, speaking both Spanish and English. They've now got friends all over the world, and they've definitely got a wider perspective on life and culture than a lot of their friends back in the UK. They're never going to feel 100% British because they spent their whole childhood in Peru, and yet they're never going to feel 100% Peruvian. But probably the people they relate best to are people who grew up in the same sort of situation as them, third culture kids we call them.
One of the best things about being a family on the mission field is that the children can participate in the ministry. They're not just tagging along. Our oldest daughter has been very involved in a local orphanage, and she just loves it in the ministry she's had with the little children.
What I've learned about the family life on the mission field is that your children are part of your ministry, they're part of what you do, they're not a separate thing. And the attitudes of the parents, I think, at least for us, the children pick up on that. And if they do, if it's good attitudes, the children only enhance the ministry as a family.
Prepare them for the field, and when they're there, talk to them about what we're going to do and let them know that they're important. They're not less important than what we're doing. I would advise that when missionaries get to the field, they should not let their ministry supersede or seem more important than their children. Children are part of the ministry, and sometimes we neglect our children and let our ministry look more important than the children, and the children feel abandoned. They feel as if they're not valued.
So much depends on the attitude of the parents and the family together. And if the children are included as part of the planning and as part of the process and consider themselves, view themselves as part of the ministry, then I think that's one way to prepare really well for the family, for the field.
So we did a lot of things to help them to get ready. For example, they like animals, but we were living in a rented home in the U.S. where we couldn't have pets, so we told each one of you can have a pet, and so they each dreamed about what kind of pet they'd have, and each of you can decorate your room in a special way, and so they made lots of plans. We helped them to think in advance of all the things that were waiting for them, school and a new country, and just to get them excited about it in advance. That helped a lot.
As a family, I was able to keep my kids at home for some of their schooling, but we used all different kinds of different educations, opportunities. We did homeschooling, we did little community schools, we also had our kids for some years in boarding schools. So we did the whole gamut of options for our kids' education.
The best tip that I have would be to really bond well before you go about what you're going into, and let the children see themselves as part of your team. And then to really have one line that can draw all of you together when things are not going according to plan or going perhaps in the direction you would like them to go. But for example, when we went out, I had a line that I used with everybody, and I just said, "We are so blessed." And then when things got bad and I said, "We are so blessed," we had different ways of saying, "We are so blessed," or "We are so blessed." But it was really helpful to bring us back together to our purpose when we realized how blessed we were and that we were to be a blessing to the people around us.
For me, that was important to have other missionary mothers who could give advice, who were a little bit older, who had kids who were older, who had already gone through. Also, to be sure of how you want to bring up your own children. I think in a small community, it's very easy to feel judged or criticized by somebody else who brings up their children differently. And so for me, I think that was one thing that I learned, that it's important to have your own, to be sure about your own way of doing things.
Advice to moms on the field, really keeping your quiet time as a prime focus every day, preferably every morning before everybody wakes up. But if not, during the day, if you have little ones at home, really turning off all the frustrations and responsibilities and chores of the day, and just taking half an hour to be quiet. If they're babies, little ones, when they nap, you nap. But having energy come from resting and then being available to the rest of the needs later on in the day, which when we're tired, It's always hard, I think, dinner times to be calm and quiet. But I think if you've had your rest in the day with the little ones, it's really helpful on the field. I really think for each family it's important to determine how much energy the mum would have or the dad could be involved. I very much enjoyed home educating my children, and I made ministry very much a part of their lives, involved them in whatever we were doing, especially hospitality ministry. And I think the benefit from keeping a mindset of being open to what your strengths and weaknesses are and seeing where the Lord would lead you in terms of home educating or sending the children to school, as long as they're educated and they love the Lord when they graduate, that's really what we want.
In our situation, Joshua travels a lot, and it's important for me sometimes to travel with him, but I sometimes opt out from traveling with him because I know we still have a child at home. Even when Jochebed was home, I would say I would rather stay home and be with my children than go with him. Anybody else could do what he's doing, but I'm the only one that will be able to take care of my children. They would grow and leave the house sometimes. This is the time I have with them. I have to spend it as much as possible with them. So I would advise that mothers have to be there. Their first ministry is to their children. They have to be there for their children. The fathers as well. Joshua has done is everywhere he goes, he calls the house. He tries to get the SIM card whichever country he goes to. He gets a SIM card, and every day he calls home. He actually does their own work with them from wherever he is. And then when he comes back, he takes each child out just to have a catch-up time. And that encourages the children.
Maintaining your marital relationship is essential for survival on the field and essential for good family health. Plan to make your marriage a priority, even as you adjust to a new culture. A good marriage and family life will be a strong testimony in the culture in which you serve. Before God called you to the field, He called you to be a family.
It's so important that we put time and energy into our marriage relationship. I mean, that's vital to the family and to the ministry. I mean, there are some advantages in mission work that you can do ministry together and you have an experience together, but there's also a lot of stresses, and especially if you have young children. We had intentionally had a date once a week where we got away from the kids and tried to do something fun together, and that really helped our marriage relationship, sustained it.
Date night, if possible, make it a priority and do it. But also be flexible. It's not always going to look like a date night. It's not always, you got to find time to spend together, whether it's a cup of coffee or whether, just trying to go to bed at the same time or get up together at the same time. And just don't forget about each other in the maze of changes and transitions and learning a culture and language and adjusting and helping your kids. It's easy to forget that your spouse also needs you and needs time, and that you need it together as a couple.
It's very easy to get caught up in ministry and to make that your first priority. And men just love to get away and work. And that usually takes you away from your family and can easily put in those extra hours. But you got to say no. You got to learn to say no, because there's so much to do, and you only got so much time to do it in. And you got to learn to say no. Now I have to leave. Now I have to go home. Now I have to get back. Put the ministry on the shelf and work with family and work with a wife and make it work.
Staying close to the Lord. And if you find your fulfillment in Him, then you're less likely to depend so much on your spouse to give what you think you need.
Yeah.
And because you set yourself up for disappointment if you think your spouse is going to provide all of that. There's going to be things that frustrate you. Forgive quickly, forgive easily, and forgive often.
We find that we enjoy walking together in the mornings, and we can discuss what's going to happen that day and also discuss what we are having problems with together and sort them out.
We might be stomping by the time the end of the walk is done, but we've worked through it.
Yep. Many of our walks have ended with not talking to each other.
Need a little break, yeah.
But don't try and fix things all the time, too. Be a good listener, because that is a lot of times what your spouse is looking for, is just to hear and know you care, and you just to be a good listener.
Ministries come and go, and your location of mission and ministry comes and goes, and it changes. But your relationship, your marriage, that's until death do you part, and with your kids as well. So in the end, well worth it to develop that and strengthen that. Definitely, we do guard our family time, but love to have people come and join our family, to be part of that, and for people to see the dynamic of our family. I think that just even encourages us as a couple to have others experience family, especially those who might be feeling lonely, might be feeling lost and missing their own family.
Family devotions too.
Every meal, after breakfast, after
carried out, that was passed down from our parents and grandparents.
And even when, now that it's just down to one son and he's gone a lot, that when we have breakfast together, we still have our devotion time. It's not just a family thing, it's a couple thing as well. And another fun thing that we find is just sharing the story of how we met and sharing the story of our relationship. It always reminds us again of why we fell in love and what we love about each other, and it just sort of renews that passion and the excitement and joy in each other. Lots of hugs and kisses.